I'm recording this on my phone because I just got a new phone and I want to play around with it more. So I want to talk about something that maybe it's very specific to me as my process as a filmmaker. Maybe it's something that only I care about, but I guess by the kind of logic, if I care about something, then just by statistics alone, there's probably other people out there who care about this or who will relate to this to some extent. So I'm going to make a quick little video about this. I'm not going to add too many cuts. I don't think I'm going to try not to add any cuts because this is just all on the iPhone here. Um, but I want to just share something that I've been kind of going through in terms of my process of filmmaking. And to talk about that process, I need to back up a little bit. This is related to Little Black Submarines. By the way, this is the big movie that we're working on right now. We're finishing up editing. It's going to be out really soon. There's going to be information soon. Stay tuned for that. But something that I've gone through editing that movie and other projects. And to talk about that, I kind of got to talk about my process in terms of filmmaking and I guess my mental energy when it comes to filmmaking. So the way I work when it comes to making movies is I go all in on something. I give myself 120% when it comes to working on a project. For instance, earlier this year, I was writing a script. I'm not going to talk about the script. I want to keep that private for now. But with that project, I wasn't really working on much. The editing on Little Black Submarines had kind of reached a lull where there wasn't much for me to do. So I had the capacity to branch out and do other projects and work on other things. And so in that lull, in that time, I decided to write a screenplay, a feature-length screenplay. And while I was writing this screenplay consumed my life. Um, I was going through the process that I do to write this thing, which is a beat sheet, an outline, a script, and then a script. And every single day I'd get up and the first thing I would do was I would write. I'd write for a couple hours every day. I would pull together mood boards. I would research similar films and similar stories that I was inspired by with this one. I was researching the themes and ideas that are intertwined into this project. I was making music for this project because that's part of my writing process too. Is I'll make like garage band songs for the music for the movie to get my kind of creative energy and juices flowing. And that was my life for a couple weeks when there was a lull in Little Black Submarines, was just giving myself all over to the screenplay. And when I'm making a movie, it's no different. I'm going all in. I'm thinking about the movie all the time. And I'm of course working on logistics to get this movie made. I'm thinking about casting, I'm thinking about editing, I'm thinking about writing, I'm thinking about storyboarding, props, food, scheduling, all of the logistical stuff I'm working on. And when I'm not working on it, I'm thinking about the movie because I believe that when I work on a project, when I commit to a project, I have to go all in on it because I have to make this thing as good as it can be. Because if I just kind of give half of my energy, I maybe other people don't know that, but I know that, and then I would be really disappointed with myself. So maybe this is a good thing, maybe this is a bad thing, but that's just how I work when it comes to making movies. Is I like to go all in, and that means when you go all in, you can only do that for so long. That's only sustainable for so long before eventually you get burnt out creatively to an extent. That's happened on a couple projects of mine where the production dragged on. That happened on Video Carnage, for instance. To an extent, to a lesser extent, it happened on Two Little Ghosts. And I frequently encounter that when I'm working on a project, I reach a certain point where mentally I need to be done and the movie needs to be done. And so, how do I know a movie's done? Well, one of the ways that I know a movie's done is, is it finished, right? Are all the shots in there that need to be in there? Is all the sound work done that needs to be done, right? There's the technical aspect. Is the movie done? I look at the technical aspect. But also I look at the flaws of the movie, or at least what I perceive to be the flaws. I try to have it be a point where most of the flaws that I've had with the movie have either been addressed or taken care of, or I'm just okay with them being in the movie. I might not be okay with the flaw itself. Like I might be disappointed in myself, but I'm okay. I can live with myself if the flaw is in the movie and I know that it's a movie and I know that it's a flaw. As long as I know that, I'm okay with it. So that's kind of the space that I'm in when it comes to finishing a movie is like, have I addressed everything that needs to be addressed? Am I okay with the flaws that are in the movie, or have I taken care of the flaws that are in the movie? And of course, writing a project, filming a project, editing a project, you're very aware of all the flaws and the things that uh, are in your movie because you watch it over and over and over. And to a point, you become numb to it. And that process is draining in itself. And that doesn't necessarily burn you out. But what the danger is when you get burnt out and you're still working on that process, right? Because that's when you start cutting corners. This happened to me on Video Carnage. Um, it's no secret that the entire audio in the film is dubbed. That was a creative choice that I had taken early on in the production, really before we started shooting. As I was like, I really wanted to see a movie be fully dubbed because I thought that was the best way to get crisp, clean audio. I was excited by the idea. I really like dubbing. I think it's a really fun process personally. I mean, it's a hard process, but it's fun to me. And so I went into it thinking that, we're going to spend a month shooting this movie, and then I'll have an entire month to dub the movie and work on the sound design. What happened was that the production dragged on for a lot longer, and during that process, I became totally burnt out. And when you're burnt out and then you have a lot of dubbing to do, what happened was I rushed through the dubbing within, I think, a week or two. I think I spent 2 weeks on the sound design of the movie instead of the proper month that it deserved. And, you know, creatively, was that the right thing to do? I don't know. Probably not. But from a mental standpoint, that I had just reached a point where I needed to be done. And this is kind of the my personal philosophy. The point I'm trying to make here is that for me personally, when I get to a point where I need to be done with a movie, I kind of feel like at a certain point, a movie just needs to be done, right? Because as indie filmmakers and no budget filmmakers, we do have the luxury of time. There isn't a studio executive breathing down your neck. There isn't deadlines that a studio has put out. There isn't a release schedule, anything like that. There's no one really to disappoint but yourself, or maybe your fans if you've shared your release date or anything with your fans and audience. Even that can be changed. There's no real obligation there to hold to that necessarily. So our luxury as no budget filmmakers is time. But in my opinion, time can also be an enemy of sorts when it comes to procrastination and delaying things and letting things drag out for far too long. I always try to get things done as quickly as possible and just get it out of the way. I was one of those people where I would try to, when I went to school, I would try to do my homework in class. And when I wasn't doing it in class, if I didn't finish it, I would go home and the first thing I would do is I would just get right to work on my homework because I just want to be done with it. That's just how my brain works. So for me, at a certain point, even though there's no deadlines and time, we have all the time in the world, I feel like creatively, at a certain point, the movie just needs to be done. So what I do on a project when it comes up to wrapping up a project is I make a deadline for myself and I say the movie just needs to be done by this day, regardless, and I give myself those deadlines. Obviously, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there because, again, there's no financial obligation to stick to schedules necessarily. But creatively, I have to get to a point where, I'm pretty burnt out generally to finish a project because, again, I give my projects my all because they're my babies. And you got to do that. You got to give your movie the time and attention that it deserves and it needs. So when I get burnt out, essentially, I come to a point where it's like, okay, the movie needs to be done. There's flaws in the movie, yes, but I try not to beat myself up on the flaws and the things that are wrong with the movie. I mean, obviously, I take it very hard usually when I'm very disappointed with myself and something that I've done, and I feel like I wasn't on my A game in terms of directing or editing or anything like that. That matters a lot to me, but I try not to let it get to me too much. And what I try to do is I say to myself, okay, you were unsuccessful at this element in the movie. Say the dubbing, for instance. You were unsuccessful. You failed at this aspect of the movie, whether it was, you know, costuming, directing, whatever it is. And I tell myself, that's okay because failure is good. Failure is an opportunity to learn, and you've learned from this experience. And what you can do with this current failure is you take that on with you to the next project as something that you know you'll do better on the next one. Because I believe in a process of working where it's a constant improving, constantly getting better, and not letting yourself get bogged down by the details of one little project. Because I think if I was too precious with any one film, any one flaw, then the movie would never get made because I would always be tweaking it and perfecting it and trying to make it better and better and better. And let's be honest here, no movie's perfect. No movie is, you know, the perfect movie really. So you can only do so much. And I think for me personally, where I like to spend my energy is I get the movie to a point where I'm okay with the flaws that are in the movie. All the technical work that's needed to be done has been done. I'm probably burnt out by this point, and I have a list of things that I've learned on making this project, and I've cataloged those things, and I am conscious to bring those to the next project that I worked on. That's my long preamble for this video in terms of uh, what I'm going through because that's how I work when it comes to making movies. I try not to get hung up on everything that's wrong, although I pay attention and I give a lot of care to flaws in my films in the projects that I work on. But I try not to get hung up on them because I think I learned, I failed, I learned, I'm going to do better on the next one. That's just how I work. So when it comes to Little Black Submarines, it's been a really interesting process because obviously the little kernel of idea dates back to summer of 22. I started working on the screenplay in January of 23. We filmed it in the summer of 23 in July and August. And I've been editing it ever since. And so that's, let's see, if I look at it from after additional photography, so in August, so September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, April. So that's 8 months. Been editing this film for 8 months. I've been working on it for over a year. And I reached a point recently. Part of this was self imposed deadlines, too. There's some other aspects at play here. But I reached a point where I was just, creatively, I've moved on, right? I'm no longer, I've left the world of Little Black Submarines. I'm no longer in the world, no longer am I spending every single hour of my day thinking about the movie because I'm just exhausted of the movie. I'm not agonizing over how to perfect this movie because I know I can accept the flaws that are in it and I've learned from them and I'm going to do better on the next one. And so I reached a point where it's really interesting where I just had to say goodbye to the movie essentially, creatively and mentally, I guess. There's still work to be done on the movie, and I hope that makes sense when I say that I've moved on from the project. But yeah, and it was a hard decision, or maybe not hard. Maybe it was kind of more my body and my mind telling me when I was done, and all I had to do was just listen, really. But you know, to be frank, I think there's a lot of things that I could change about Little Black Submarines, things that I am unhappy about. Because again, there is no time limit on us. We've said we want to release it this year, but we could wait longer. We could release it next year if we wanted. We could release it in 2 years. We could spend time tinkering and shooting it and reshooting and adding new lines and dubbing and all this kind of stuff. I could do that, but I'd probably go crazy. I would go crazy. I'd be suicidal. I would go completely insane, I think, if I did that. Because I've given the movie so much of myself already. And I know that I've learned and I know that I'm a better filmmaker now than I was before I started Little Black Submarines. And I'm excited, frankly, about the next project. I'm excited to use the things that I've learned, the things that I failed at in this one. I'm excited to improve upon those things in the next movie. I'm excited to become a better filmmaker. I'm excited for new ideas and new things. I think part of what keeps filmmaking fresh for me is constantly doing new things and innovating, trying to innovate the art form and just myself as an artist and as a filmmaker. And I think if I spent multiple years on a project, I would go insane. I would go crazy. I'd be pulling my hair out. I would be wiping my blood on the walls. Like it'd be chaos. I don't think anyone would want to see that. No one would want to experience that. And I've never dealt with studio pressure. I've now never filmed a movie in Hollywood, but I do know that it must be incredibly difficult for myself if I was in Hollywood and I was working on a movie for 2, 3 years. Like I totally get what Denis Villeneuve says when he says he wants to take a break from Dune now because he's been in the Dune world since what, 2018, 2019, something like that. Like he's been in it for a half a decade pretty much. That's a long time to be working on one project effectively, even though it's two movies, but it's really just kind of the same back to back. I can't imagine what that must be like and how hard that must be creatively giving this film everything you got and giving it your soul, your body, your mind, all your time, your energy, just waking up and you're just thinking about Dune or whatever the film is. I can't imagine that. That must be so difficult. And I have a lot of respect for directors in Hollywood and the stamina that they have to have creatively to be mentally in the zone on their film. Frankly, I don't think I'm that good. I don't think I'm that filmmaker with that long stamina, that huge amount of stamina to be able to creatively be fresh and new and have good ideas and be a great tastemaker for a movie. I don't think I have that necessarily at a Hollywood level, but at a no budget level where we're kind of in control of all those things, I think I'm okay. Like I don't think I mean it seems egotistical to compliment yourself. I mean, I'm very aware of my of the things that I need to improve on in terms of filmmaking. I'm not going to say that I'm a great filmmaker, but I will say that I'm really good at learning from mistakes, I think. Overall. I Because I like to learn. I That's just one of my things that I love to do. I would love to go back to college if it was free and I would love to learn all about different things and different languages and different arts and philosophy and history. I think that'd be really cool to do. And I can't do that because it costs a lot of money. So the next best thing is to learn about my craft that I already know, which is filmmaking. And I think I'm pretty good at learning, even if I don't always execute things well, even if it doesn't seem like I've improved, I'm definitely way more aware. Um, and yeah, I think with Little Black Submarines, to bring this back to the point of the video, I reached a point within the last couple, well, really, it was the last month, really, of, you know, I had to creatively kind of say goodbye to the movie, which was the picture lock. I guess, yeah, we haven't made a video since then. So I guess this official announcement, we've, aside, unless you've seen our social media, we've officially locked picture on Little Black Submarines. And for me, in terms of my creative mental energy, that was kind of me saying goodbye to Little Black Submarines because if you aren't aware of what a picture lock is, that is essentially where the length of the movie doesn't really change, but um, the sound still needs to be worked on, the picture needs to be worked on. So, for instance, maybe um, you'll have a title card in your movie that says there'll be a close up of the shoes in this shot, and that title card will go for about 5 seconds or something like that. You're not going to change the length, but you know that you're going to put that element in. So the effects aren't finished, the sound isn't finished, but the length isn't going to change. That's essentially what a picture lock is in layman's terms. And so we did that with Little Black Submarines. And that's a whole nother story about how we became picture locked. And I will be going full detail. Well, there'll be a tell all in terms of all the production of Little Black Submarines. But I had to say goodbye to the movie essentially and say, you know what? The movie is what it is. It's okay. You know, the mistakes that are there. And, you know, then all that's left to do is just carry out those technical things, filling in those VFX shots, adding in that sound effect, putting in this ADR line right here. That's all there's left to do really on the film. And it's kind of tricky getting up to that point. And it's something that a lot of filmmakers will encounter if you're like me anyways. Maybe you're not like me, maybe you work very different, because I do know there's a lot of perfectionist filmmakers out there who will tinker with something for years and they won't let it go, and they'll say I'd rather have the movie never be released than have it be released with something I'm unhappy with. And there's filmmakers out there who are generally and genuinely really happy with their own films. I think that's really cool. I'm not one of them. I don't really relate to that because I think I've always been slightly unhappy to an extent on all of my movies, and that's just the way I work. And maybe one day I'll get there, but maybe not, and we'll see. But I guess my piece of advice that I wanted to give to any filmmakers, if you are like me, um, and you do mentally kind of checked out, and you do have to say goodbye to a project after a certain point and move on to the next thing, to any filmmakers out there who are like that, my advice to you is just give yourself a deadline and stick to it because that's going to help you. That's going to help motivate you. And also, again, I've kind of talked about this already, but it's okay to have mistakes in your movie as long as you learn from those mistakes and you're going to improve on the next one, I think. And what those mistakes are is going to be different for every person, every filmmaker, and every film. But I think if you're self aware enough and you get feedback from your peers and other filmmakers and other people, I think you can become aware of things that you need to be improve on, things that aren't up to par, aren't up to standard in your film. Take those things and learn them because again, failure is not a bad thing. Failure is a great teacher. Failure is how we improve as filmmakers. And, you know, I'd rather, fail 1,000 times than never fail in my life because that means I've just learned that much more about filmmaking and making movies. So that's kind of this thing that I've been thinking about recently as I've locked picture, as kind of I mentally have said goodbye to Little Black Submarines. Yes, there's lots more work to be done, but I've kind of put it away. It's out of my head, kind of, except for all the technical stuff that we have to do. And yeah, that's just been on my brain recently. And I wanted to share that with everybody else in case anyone else is going through that as well right now. Because I think it's something that I'm willing to guess a lot of filmmakers go through. And I would be very curious to hear their thoughts on this as well, because it's something that I'm trying to deal with and find new ways to deal with. All of that kind of weird messiness of finishing up a movie. So yeah, if you want to know more about Little Black Submarines, make sure you hit subscribe. We have an announcement video we made about it. We've talked about it a little bit on this channel, but it is the biggest movie we've ever made. It's a giant, massive, colossal monster of a movie. It is the longest I've ever worked on a movie by far, and I am so excited for it to be out and released and ready. And yeah, so stay tuned for Little Black Submarines updates.